Hey, howdy, hey. My name's Jay, and today we're going to go over the 10 best comics to read, either starting off or just in the whole of existence of comics. But that's just my humble opinion as a nerd. First up, plain and simple, we've got Space Ghost. He's an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon. This one is written by Alex Ross and some other guy. His name is Ariel Olivetti and Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly is very famous for his comic book writing. It's a dark, gritty reboot. It's amazing. It makes you cry, makes you laugh. It's really cool redefining of the character. It's something that I'd recommend to anybody. It's a crazy space opera. Makes me rethink how much I like Star Wars, but yeah, it's amazing. That's number 10. There's two ways to really go through this list. You can either read number 1, which is as you get more close towards the top, they're going to be denser, a little bit harder to read, harder to, I would even say, to get your hands on, but that's just me. Well, no, all these are very accessible. I just came to some random comic book shop. They had them all. It's really cool. Next up, though, Spidey, Freshman Year. This is volume 2, but it's a really good series by Tom. Let's read the authors' names. Well, the last names are Thompson, Arujo, Stockman, and Campbell. It's a redefining and/or a re-sculpturing of the first 30 issues of Spider-Man. So they basically took what was from the 60s, kind of the Silver Age, where it was a little bit a different storytelling medium at the time, where they had to tell things that were made for the shelf, that you could pick up any issue and you could read it just fine. They keep some of that in here for the first 5 issues, where they have this cool intro where they tell the Uncle Ben story about how he died and great power, great responsibility, even twisting it for each issue's independent story, although it's still having really good overall arc. Yeah, really good. The art I love, except for Iron Man. Oh my god, they screw up Iron Man. Also, it's really at the beginning. So like, Iron Man he makes a joke about the fact that Tony Stark is so amazing. So like, Peter Parker hasn't had his identity exposed, and neither has Iron Man. So it's really beginning stuff. Still definitive, and I would say amazing, no matter how you spin it. Next one up is actually the only one that they didn't have, but it's really short, real simple. Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. It's less than 50 pages. Amazing read. Yeah, no, Deadpool has always been a voice for the criticisms of comic books. It was good. It was everything that you want out of a Deadpool comic, where there's your expectations and he subverts them. Simple as that. Subverting the comic book narrative, there's no author that I would say does it better, or at least has done it better. Right now he's a little bit, I don't know, his stuff isn't so good. Frank Miller. So, the next book is The Dark Knight Returns, and then right after that, Daredevil Born Again, which this one's a collected issue, so you can look up Born Again at your library or comic book store, and they'll be able to give it to you, but really good. Dark Knight Returns is, I would say, the definitive Batman comic, because it basically sums up all of comic bookdoms. Like, Batman gets tired of being Batman, which we've had how many Batman movies? But Batman is old. Batman faked his death, and then he comes back, and he does amazing stuff. Really good. The art is solid. There's like four chapters to it. Stephen King actually says this is one of his favorite, possibly the finest piece of comic art ever published in a popular edition. You know, I'm not one to disagree with Stephen King. He's a pretty smart guy. Pretty cool. Daredevil, it's about how, for the first time, hey, how you doing? The first time, Daredevil gets his identity exposed by the Kingpin, and what it's really like for an average hero to have that happen to him. Yeah, no, it's simple, to the point. It's Stan Lee's, the ideals that he set out for Marvel, because Stan Lee really wanted his characters to be the answer to DC, because DC came first in a lot of respects, is that the DCs were like gods, where he wanted the Marvel characters to be like people, where Spider-Man is very relatable, very average, something that they actually nail in Spidey extremely well. He's missing high school. He's trying to get a girl. You know, like it's very good. Daredevil, poor schmuck, poor guy. He has his identity revealed, and then he basically loses his life. He regains it in the end, but even then, it's to a very extent.
I love this thing. It's so cute.
Yeah,
That's just
real
cool.
good series.
Yeah.
Next up, after those, X-Men: The Dark Phoenix Saga. As I said with Marvel, they had this story structure where you could pick up any comic off the shelf, and it would be good. Where you wouldn't feel necessarily lost because they give you an intro and they reintroduce the characters and they set up the canvas. X-Men have done this the most spectacularly, I would say, where you can jump in on any arc, and I would say it's amazing. This is really done well by Chris Claremont and I forget what his first name is, but Byrne. And this is the first comic book series where a character really dies and it makes an impact on the scene, where Jean Grey, Cyclops' romance value, it dies, and it's. I would say that the first 6 issues are kind of dry, but the last one which is a jumbo issue and lasts 100 pages, is this really cool sprawling. Jean Grey does something horrifying to an alien race, and she, the X-Men basically have to stand trial for her actions, and they all lose, and Jean Grey dies. But how she dies is so sad and so. It's the first time that it ever happened. Superman is really known for the fact that in the 90s he died, and or all of his greatest arcs are him going away and or giving the mantle to somebody else, which is no different for All-Star Superman. But All-Star Superman does it in such an interesting way where the first page is his whole origin story, where people do origin stories to death these days. And it's 8 words, 4 panels, 1 page. You can't get any more succinct than this. It's 12 issues. All of these you can tackle on your own, where they don't require any continuity. You can just jump into them. They're great picks. They're wonderful. And if you hate Superman, I would say I used to hate Superman, but then I read this comic and I was like, wow, that's what Superman's supposed to be. If you saw Man of Steel, they really borrowed from this, or at least they tried to, and it just makes you disappointed in the movies for the fact that we could have had this, but it's really good. Really good. It's 12 issues, and the premise of the story is that he's dying, they can't stop it, and he's finding someone either to give his legacy and or give his powers, and through that he does 12 Herculean feats, just like Hercules did, and in a similar manner, just doing good things to be good. You know, people wonder about the motivations of characters, and they try to, again, with origin stories, they try to say why people do things for vengeance, for some kind of resolve, where Superman is genuinely just a good person to be good, whereas the Joker is just insane to be insane. Killing Joke, I really wish I were at Comic-Con, but I sadly could not make it because of this college visit. I'm in Iowa City, but I love it here. The college visit's going well. I was going to do a Joker cosplay, but I didn't have any killer jokes to just lay upon everyone. Arg, 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 arg. Another story that's under 50 pages, some of them just being flat out art. It's what I would say, and a lot of people would say, is the definitive Joker story. It goes through his origin, and the fact that he doesn't know his origin, and or his origin changes based on whatever he feels. It's a story with a lot of nuance, because the ending is up to interpretation, where Batman gets a hold of the Joker, but they're just laughing in the rain. They get everybody to laugh at the end. Messed up story. Really good, though. Really short, really easy to read. 10 out of 10, would recommend. That's number 3. Now, a lot of people would say that this deserves the spot number 1, but no. Alan Moore created the definitive satire, and when everybody looks to do a gritty reboot of something, it stands in the shadow of Watchmen. Watchmen is the definitive comic book in the sense that it tells you what superheroes would be like in reality, not some campy or even false gritty reboot where it's like, oh, he's so like Christian Bale. Like, it's good and they try, but again, it assumes too much niceness, I would say. Also, it doesn't go out and flesh out the universe. As much as the Christopher Nolan trilogy is good, it stands in the shadow of this book. Also, kind of flubs its comic book references. Whereas there was a movie for this. There's a lot. There's prequels in comic book form. A lot of those are hit or miss. The good ones were the Minutemen and the what is it? Oh, Silk Spectre's daughter. That one was good, but the other ones are really just mediocre. There is a movie. The movie, I would say, is one of the best comic book adaptations. The best being Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I would recommend that one, although it's slow. It's hard to get a color version of the copy because a lot of libraries just have the black and white manga one. Other than that, yeah, Watchmen's it. Definitive satire. So, it's 12 issues. The only thing I would say, though, is that it's difficult to read because at the end of every issue there is portions from books, newspapers, or articles at the time. And it's like reading a real book, whereas, like, reading this, it's easy. It's like a 45-minute read. This is like, I don't know, 3, 4 hours, 5 hours? And it's tough. But it just means that the story lasts longer and you really enjoy yourself. Also, when it comes to a philosophical ending, it begs the questions that moral ethicists have been stumped on for all of existence. Really, really, really good. It's sad, though, because it's a satire that condemns all superheroes, even though it's the best superhero story. Now, if you're wondering, Jay, what could possibly come after all of that stumps Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, the modern stays of comic book history? Well, I would say only one. March. It's written by John Lewis, and it's drawn and or stenciled by Andrew Aiden and Nate Powell. If you don't know who John Lewis is, I would say that you're not a history nerd and or you're not up on your civil rights, because this story is about the civil rights movement from the early 1960s, from when John Lewis was a kid. It basically gives his origin story, which, for a real person, super cool guy. So cool. There are so many moments in this comic book where I'm like, that couldn't have really happened. I Googled it, and they did. And I was like, damn, that's thematic history right there, because it's the most definitive. The book is in black and white, and there's 3 volumes. Also at your public library, because it won the Abe Lincoln Award for the year that it came out, and it's astounding. Like, there were so many times that I was like, this can't get any more messed up than it did, and then white racists just proved me wrong. Like, just murder, terrorism, like it's all there, and it's a history that I wish I had learned in school, but it just doesn't make it through. John Lewis is only second to Martin Luther King, if I'm not making my point clear enough, where he marched with him, he was there, he gave a speech before Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. So, being only second to Martin Luther King, still amazing. It's so good. It is, like, Watchmen, I would say, is not only the definitive superhero story because it uses the comic book medium in a way that no other comic book will, but March is similar on that, where the art just goes into how people historically acted and how it impacted the world, the civil rights movement impacted the world. I would say that they both have incredible amounts of literary merit, but at the end of the day, this is justice. This is sad. This is good. This is truthful. This is reality. Now I know what you might be thinking. Jay, you just listed off 10 books that go from $15, $20, $20, another $40 right there. Why? $30. $30. I'll just call, that's $20. That's what is it? That's $18. But this is only the first volume of 2, and then this is another. Good lord, $17. So I don't know. Somebody do math. That's a lot of money. I don't have that kind of money either. I would say that you don't need to spend all that much on comics because you have a superpower that you didn't know you had. It's your public library. If you're at Comic-Con watching this video, that whole event is organized by librarians. Be very grateful to them. Also, appreciate your public library programs because every kid in Medina doesn't have one. But if you are one of those kids in Medina, I would say you're just a car ride away from Schaumburg, Itasca, or any of the other library programs that have shelves upon shelves upon shelves of comic books that go into. You can just jump in onto a character from any issue that says number 1 and then on forward, and then you have the internet. So if you want to look up a specific continuity for a thing, or the thing that I did was I really appreciated Alan Moore's writing, so I looked what other books he read. He wrote Swamp Thing. He wrote League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I haven't read that one yet, although it's on my list. He wrote a series of issues on Superman called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Series, mwah, so good. But again, proves the point of that every single good Superman series is about him dying and leaving and not being able to, like, yeah, it's Man of Tomorrow and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, Death of Superman, and All-Star Superman. Those are his 3 best comics, man. Or at least the most popular ones, because people all think that Superman is too overpowered, and he is. Like, so for context as to why I'm a person that knows things about comics, or to flex upon you how much I've read, I read all 9 volumes, or 52 issues, of Justice League, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Batman for the New 52. The New 52 is a reboot that started in 2011 to 2014, met with a lot of harsh criticism because a lot of it is bad. But the stuff I read was pretty good, especially Aquaman and Batman. Thing about Batman. If you get to write Batman, that means a lot of people have been like, we gotta make sure that he writes something okay. There aren't, as much as I've read Batman stories and I was like, it's just okay, there's never been bad Batman that I've read. Whereas the Wonder Woman for New 52, I was hate reading it. Like the whole time I was like, God, what is going on with this story? It's bonkers off the wall and doesn't make any sense. Yeah, Batman. You can't, I would say that this is the definitive Batman story, but not my favorite. My favorite Batman story is definitely Batman Hush. It's written by Jim Lee. Jim Lee was the executive producer of DC from like 2016 till I think very recently, although that's because DC is having financial problems. And that's something that's pretty crazy is that, so Deadpool, as I mentioned earlier, in the 80s and 90s when there's like a whole comic book history that, do I go on to explain it? Yeah, so there's like 4 ages. There's the Golden Age, which is like from 38, the first issue of Superman, to the first issue of Spider-Man in 1962 or 1964. Somebody Google it. It's some nerd. Tell me Hey, Nathan? 63 is the first issue of Spider-Man. Although the thing that I would say starts off the Golden Age is The Flash. 1960, right? 1960 for The Flash?
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah. But it's the 60s that start because there was this thing called the Comics Code Authority where Golden Age is defined by its rage, violence, and its general campiness where everybody could read a comic and they'd enjoy it. The problem is that moms or Karens would just like... They were very concerned. They wrote into the publishers and they wrote into the government, and then there was a government agency called the Comics Code Authority. Stan Lee wrote under this Comic Codes Authority, and it basically ensured that there was no gays, no commies, and very little violence. So the Golden Age characters, Batman had a gun. The reason that the DC characters have this no killing rule is not because of an ethical or moral artistic viewpoint as much as they were censored, and it stuck around, and it was pretty good, and it was embraced by the artists of the time. That was the Silver Age. The Silver Age wore off around the 80s or 86 when new violent pieces that commentated on the long-standing and almost overbearing Comics Code authorities, like The Dark Knight Returns, or Watchmen, that both came out in 1986, I'm pretty sure, but mid-'80s. They both came out in the mid-'80s, same time as Terminator, same time as Star Wars, like where, fun fact, there are plenty of stories that do the bad guy as my father before Luke did. My favorite is Jack Kirby's New Gods, so that's a whole universe that's really good. But back to the history points. That actually came out right before Star Wars did in 78 to 82, that 12-issue series. Not really great. If you want something that's amazing that goes over like Darkseid, Mr. Miracle, or any of the New Gods, that's Mr. Miracle 2018 by Tom King. Mwah! Amazing. Nuanced. It got an award. I think it got the Pulitzer even, I think. Not sure. Doesn't really matter. It's just a really good book. Kind of mature themes though. So the Silver Age was good. Then it moved on to the Bronze Age / Modern Age, where things got more violent, or the storytelling changed from where people would write these long issues like at DC, before they were called DC, they had Detective Comics and Action Comics, where Detective Comics was Batman, Action Comics was Superman, and they had those long-going series that now are on their 1,000th issue, although they were briefly stopped for the New 52, which was a big thing that people really didn't like, although it was a sharp restart where there was the number one, everything got new number ones, so everybody had to restart, and then Rebirth came on and was like, well, that stuff's still canon anyway, the Action Comics and Detective Comics, because it was too much to throw away, too much legacy. With Alan Moore's harsh writing and or violence and or artistic writing, where I would say the Bronze Age and Modern Age are defined by their nuance and or story arcs that are shorter and not defined by the fact that Chris Claremont, so in the early 80s for X-Men, had to write issue to issue for something that every 2 weeks there had to be a new issue on the shelf. So that means people who would just randomly pick up an issue and try to start in had to be able to get in, and also they had to keep the continuing issues or the continuing readers interested in that arc as well. So there's fluff, is basically what I'm saying. Where in the Golden Age and Silver Age, there was a lot of saying exactly what's going on in the page, and or saying, I'm defeating you, evil man! Oh no, I'm out of web fluid. It wasn't great, but you have to realize with the different contextualization and different historical pieces. Modern Age, so what I would say is that the best comics are actually coming out right now, and or some of the best stories are now the easiest to access now. Again, you don't have to buy comic books in order to be in them. A lot of libraries even have digital, where you can, so at the Itasca Library, the one that I'm from, they have this thing called Hoopla, which is an app. Lovely, recommend it, 10 out of 10. You can get six books a month, or six borrows. So that means audiobooks, music, comic books. You get 6 comic books that could have just gotten right off the shelf, and you can, or something that you can do is, if you're not at Itasca, or if you're at a library that doesn't have a comic that you really want, you can ask them, hey, can you place a hold on this from the system? Because the whole systems are usually pooled together, so that way if somebody wants to read something, every single library doesn't have to buy every single copy of a book, because that's a little expensive. But, yeah, I would say these are the 10 definitive comics. These are the ones that defined history and show history as it is, where Spidey even maybe a rewriting of those first 30 issues that Stan Lee wrote, which, funny enough, people told Stan Lee, Spider-Man, terrible idea. People are afraid of spiders. Why write Spider-Man? If only they knew. The other thing I'd recommend is you look up authors. Yeah, Kevin Smith was a really good one, where he did a really good run on Daredevil. Or you look up characters where, yeah, Daredevil is probably my favorite comic book character that I love reading. Aquaman is up there because of his New 52 run that was amazing. Although the movie makes me really sad because they shoved 40 issues, or five volumes into 2 hours. Oh man, no, stop that. Gosh. You don't have to. Number one message that I want you to take away from this, though, even though I just recommended you 10 things to read, and or so there's no necessary amount to say that you're a nerd or a good person. Like, if people give you shade and or are like, wow, you didn't read that? Wow. Shut up. Like, yeah. Just read what you enjoy. And you have a right to your opinion. So if you think all these are trash, I doubt your literary and or artistic integrity, but like, if you didn't enjoy them, that's totally you, man. Needless to say, did I enjoy these? Yes, they're wonderful. They're amazing. Yeah. Last thing that I forgot to mention. There's other comic book companies other than DC and Marvel. There's Boom, Image, Dark Horse, and a couple other ones. But like indie comics are definitely a thing. They're really cool because they have all sorts of properties that you're like, wait, that's a comic book too? Like Futurama, The Simpsons, Power Rangers, Transformers, Battlestar Galactica. Like, it's all the stuff that you're like, gosh, I just wish I had Rick and Morty. Oh my god, there's 9 volumes of it, and it's all like, it's all so good. So good. That's one of the comics that I regularly buy, because it's just so good. Also, we know that those breaks are so long in between seasons, so it's like, I can't just survive on Rick and Morty memes alone, man. Give me the story. Other than that, though, happy comic book reading. I hope you enjoy. You know how YouTube works. If you want to like and subscribe, great, do that. Bye.